Okay, so today I'm going to be tooling around with a analytical tool online called Netlytic. What Netlytic does is allows us to, sort of scrape through a couple of different social media platforms, through all the text and comments and tweets and things like that, and try to make sense out of, some of the content there, who's sending what to who. So this is going to be doing sort of a scratch the surface little bit. I've messed around with Netlytic for a little bit, but this is for a affect and data science cultural studies course. And so I've messed around with it for a little bit and tried to make some connections and become familiar with the tool. So I'm going to show you some of the stuff that I've found so far. And again, this is going to be sort of some basic things that you can do with it. Netlytic.org. It is free to register. I'm just signing in with my Google name. And you can see that I've got a little bit of stuff here. I'm going to delete the data set that I had from my previous toolings around just so we can sort of start from scratch. So it kind of straight takes you to the data set area. There is some useful information that you can find, or resources and other tutorials that have already in existence. So you can go to resources for all that kind of stuff, tutorials. And you can also download data sets that might come in handy a little bit later on. So we're going to go ahead and start something new. I have already gone through and linked my Twitter account with my Netlytic login. You're going to want to go ahead and do the same. Hopefully you have your Twitter handle handy. And that's easy for you. I don't really use Twitter very often, but I wanted to make sure that I explored it a little bit on how it works with Netlytic, but it took me forever to find my actual appropriate login. But if you actually just know the handle and don't get it confused with other things, you can log in pretty easily. So my data set name here is going to be Toolin', because we're tooling around. And again, we're starting with Twitter. These are the other things that you can scrape, the other platforms that you can scrape information from. We're going to start with Twitter. And because, at least through my personal observations, I guess, I've noticed that Twitter is a platform for political activism of a kind, at least more so than others. So what am I going to do here? I've got all these different options. Obviously, we named our data set. What keywords are we going to search for? So what type of things are you looking to find in the Twitter responses or in tweets? So for me, I'm going to try to focus on something that's relatively prominent today, anyway, at the end of May in 2023. So Governor Ron DeSantis just recently announced his candidacy for president, right? Or for going for the Republican seat. I'm going to go ahead and search fascist for Ron DeSantis. And this is not biased on my part. I'm just assuming that I'm making assumptions as the researcher that there's going to be people that are making these comments, right? And I also am coming at this from the perspective of affect in regards to cultural studies. So I guess what I'm going to look for here is I'm going to look for people that are taking to Twitter and using the word fascist in correlation with Governor Ron DeSantis, right? So second step here is to choose what language you want to scrape through. I'm going to choose English because that's my primary language. And that concerns me right now, as this is the U.S. president. Maybe there would be other reasons for including what international people think about that. Of course, this one's interesting. You can sort of give a radius from a pinpoint of a location. So when you're filtering all the material that you're going to get from Twitter, you can do so by geography, which is really interesting. We might be able to put that into practice a little bit later. But for now, we're going to forego that. It does have an important mention here that, FYI, most users don't disclose their location. So although it could be a really useful tool, there's not necessarily you're you're not always going to get this information or able to use this information because not everybody is giving it when they're tweeting. Okay, 4 and 5, only include tweets that contain retweets, replies, images, videos, links, or news. So let's think about that for a minute. When might it be useful to apply these additional filters to our search queries? You might want to be able to search how engaging a particular topic is. So even though fascist is my keyword, if I go no filter, it's just going to include anything that includes that word. But if I say, well, what about using that word and only things that are retweeted? Well, then I'm sort of, I guess I'm narrowing my scope down to just the more popular things or the tweets that engaged other people and inspired them to share that content, right? So there's different reasons why we might want to include all these things. I'm going no filter and minimum number of retweets, right? We can make this even more specific. Minimum number of likes. So those are interesting ways to filter things, but I'm just going to go with tweets directed at Ron DeSantis, right? Now, what you have to make sure is that it's already got the @ sign here. What you want to make sure is that it's actually going to the appropriate handle. So the first couple of times that I did this when I was tooling around, I wasn't getting the kind of results that I would expect, but it was because I wasn't using the official Ron DeSantis. So Governor Ron DeSantis. Kind of have to go to Twitter to make sure that they've got the little medals or whatever, that those are officially those people. So we're going, let's review what we're really doing here. Got a very broad search here for the word fascist in English to Governor Ron DeSantis. So let's see how many results we get and how many people are using that particular word directly at Ron DeSantis. So when you run the test query, it's going to, unless you're not logged into Twitter or something like that, it's going to automatically just give you the results here, take you to those things, searching it for me in Twitter, right? So I can see the actual posts. And in fact, every single one is going to include my keyword, right? Now, it could be just like a fascinating case study to go around and search keywords on specific people and just browse through these and go down that rabbit hole. You could probably spend half a day doing that kind of stuff or get lost forever. But what you really ought to be doing is then importing this information, the data set, right? And if you're on the free version, you get to do 5 of these. And it's not 5 total. It's 5 at any given time. So I've found that that's plenty. I'm going to import this information, and Netlytic is then gathering all the tweets that contain that content. So really the same content that was, my search results in Twitter gave me, but it's going to make sense out of them in a different sort of way. All right, so it's giving me 1,091 tweets. And I say next step, and here it's organized them for me. So this is the same content from Twitter, right? These are those tweets, and they're all just like my search query says. So this is who it's from, and this is who it's at, and it should always say at Governor Ron DeSantis because that's what information I provided the search. And each one is going to contain the word fascist, right? So now I can cross-reference this, which is kind of cool. So I've got 110 pages of these tweets, or 1,091 total. I need to narrow that down, and I want to say, well, I've already narrowed down my search of tweets that have to include the word fascist. Let's also see, let's add another keyword to this search. So now, based on these 110 pages of posts, these 1,091 posts, it's going to also look for the word president. So I can see who of these people that are directly tweeting Governor Ron DeSantis and the word fascist, who's also talking about that in regards to presidency. And you can see like my results went from 110 pages to 8. So there's 77 partial matches. See, so we've got the word president, and we have our original keyword of fascist. What's interesting is that this time around, this time the keywords are popping out. Right? We narrowed it down based on, or we gathered our tweets based on this keyword, and now these ones are bold and changed color for us and all that stuff. So once we get to this point, guess what? You don't just have to look at this. You can download the data set that was automatically created for you as an Excel or CSV file. So if I want to take this stuff out, that's this 8 pages of data. These 77 posts have now been collected based on all these different, search criteria that I've been giving it all along. So I can hold on to that, and I can change the name so it makes more sense. And I might use the same basic data set back at the beginning. I can always go back and maybe change some of these results or whatever, or just do a similar but slightly different search and give me different results. So we got to here. Now we took away the president keyword. So we're back just at our fascist keyword. Going on to the third step in the process, the text analysis. This is where you can do really interesting things like search for keywords or even emoji extractors. Pretty awesome. You're going to analyze the remaining posts. Remember, I had 1,091 posts. I can say, well, what do I really want to look through now? Who's retweeting these things? The retweeted screen name, profile, all these different components of a tweet, right, that I can use to filter this even further. And this part I really like is the dictionaries function. So when I click on that, it's like there's these existing dictionaries. So these are data sets that other people have created that you can use and apply to what you're doing. So I like looking at this one, swear words. This is an existing dictionary, and it's got all these words that somebody has deemed as swear words, right? A lot larger than the original 7 dirty words that I preach about in all my different FCC-related traditional broadcast classes and things like that. So you can apply a dictionary that already exists, or of course create your own dictionaries, and you can apply this stuff to your search queries. So maybe I want to find out who that thinks Ron DeSantis is a fascist also is using swear words. So how aggressive are they in their messaging, right? And that might give me a better idea of how many people, or people from what geographical area, or what specific person, or what affiliated group really is aggressive or using language of this sort of like abusive nature. And that, that's going to give you somehow help you quantify all this affectual content. The only issue I find with this is like, well, let's go back and look at the swear words again. It's like, who is making this list, right? Who is saying that Bithis and bogus and boo or boon coward? Who is saying that these are swear words? So this is a little subjective, and it's like, well, can't we use, like what if I was searching for like negativity in a certain group of tweets, and I applied the swear word dictionary to that? Well, some of these words I think in different contexts can be used, and they could be both positive or negative. So there are some inherent issues with that. If I go further without applying any dictionaries, then what I can do is analyze the network. So what constitutes a tie? A tie is going to be the connection between Twitter users, right? So what's the connection? User A replied to B, user A quoted B, retweets or mentions. So I'm going to say mentions or replies. And I'm going to analyze what I've got here. And it's telling me that the number out of the 1,091 posts that I was left with, 653 have ties, and then number of ties that include self loops. So of course I can export that information, and I guess just gathering as much information as possible is, as long as you're being diligent about your sort of like file management, it's not a bad idea. But I like this part, is visualizing this. So look at this beautiful group of statistics that they give you. Makes me appreciate data science when you see something like this. It's like, oh, well, that's actually beautiful. It's not like mind-bending or annoying or confusing at all. So wow, this is giving me lots of information, and of course I'm just using my scroll wheel to zoom in and out of what looks like a galaxy of ties or connections between people that are all ultimately directed towards Governor Ron DeSantis, right? But there's these other connections in different ways of people that are replying. And of course you can like remove some of these. So, obviously all of this is going towards DeSantis, but then who are these outliers here? What's happening here? It almost reminds me of like, when you go on like do some air travel or something like that, and you see all like the routes that the different airlines are taking from their hubs and everything. So DeSantis is our hub here, and there's all these incoming pieces of information. Now, this would look a lot different, of course, if we went back to the beginning search queries and said, well, these have to include direct ties with Governor Ron DeSantis. So is he tweeting back? And this would narrow down significantly. And if he's smart, he's probably just not responding to anything. All right, and then we can go to the report. And we can save it's amazing that Netlytic is doing this stuff for us. So unique posters, total messages. It's giving me this awesome information about like frequency of like when the posts are being made, like what time of day or whatever, who our top posters are in this search field. Pretty amazing stuff. And of course you can save each one of these as necessary, or as each one of these is useful. What's incredible about this is that you can just really start, if this wasn't deemed like a worthy search or something like this, or this didn't give you the information that you were looking for or hoping for or something, it's so easy to start over again. It didn't take hardly anything to generate all this stuff. So now I've got my fully completed data set that we worked through. I, of course, can delete it or start over and do some different things. But what's interesting is this tool here allowing me to create a new data subset based on a time period. So, why would I want to do something based on a time period in regards to Governor Ron DeSantis? Maybe I want to find out, in this circumstance, I'm interested in knowing who was posting to Twitter about to Ron DeSantis about fascism, and potentially that secondary keyword search of president before he announced his candidacy. So I can go here. I clicked the create new data set subset based on the date filter. So I can say anytime after this date from some date forward, right? But I can also say before a particular date. So let's see. When did DeSantis run? I mean, when did his announcement happen? Find that DeSantis video. So let's see, that came out 6 days ago. It's the 31st of May today. So if we do this, then we say before is the 31st, 6 days ago. So let's say before the 25th. All right. So now I've got a particular subset here that we can go into. And look, it's narrowed my search. So this is anything that happened before DeSantis actually made an announcement that he was going to run. Now I think this is ordered by date. Let's go to the 51st page. This is taking us as far as back as we can. So again, I can take this useful information from before a specific time, download it in either format, continue on by adding additional keywords to this, right? So let's see who used the, well, let's go back to the preview and then wonder who was saying president before he made the announcement. So I think before we wound up with 9 or 10 pages of these. Now we only have 3 pages. Okay. Now it's interesting that, I keep coming at this as a culture studies researcher or thinking about how this could apply to some of the other things that we're studying in this particular course about affect. But I can see this as a useful tool for marketers, for business people, for social media people that just want to know how their campaigns are doing. There's a lot. Like, you can go deep here in different ways, and I can picture it being useful in lots of different people's lives. And well, anyway, let's go on and look at the network analysis of this new data set. Let's visualize these. Okay. And it looks like we can change the node size based on like what direction the tie is going. And different layouts for these. These are pretty interesting. So it's just like how the information is visually represented here. I don't think I've haven't quite gotten to the point where I'm like have a particular preference at this yet. Take the edges on nodes are the actual like the different users, right? So there's the label coming on and off. And the edges is just the actual like the representation of the tie, the connection there. And here, of course, you're like kind of like filtering which ones you're looking at. Like if a particular one is interesting you, or of particular interest, then you might want to do something like that. Of course, you can just move it around and zoom in. I love that you can save the images too. Pretty amazing. So just saving this visual representation of all these different things that have been happening. And then I'll go on to the final report and see what's different. Posts over time. I have a very short time span there, notice. And then who's making all the posts. So is there one person that is being consistent over this long is it a very short period of time and they're taking up the significant amount of posts because potentially they're so passionate at this very particular time? Or are they consistently posting over longer periods of time? What does this information say about these users? And well, there's just so much. It's a little bit overwhelming actually to think about how many different ways you can use this tool to go through all of this information. It's just wild. And here's our saved image. So I guess anything that I would have saved along the way, it's going to save it here additionally in my final report. So yeah, I mean, I can, coming from a radio world, I can almost find this as like, you can almost make up your own personal sort of data sets of like who's listening to this radio station or who's tuning into this or who's interacting with this social media profile, right? You can kind of create that stuff yourself, and Netlytic is going to churn out some of the all that important information for you very quickly. So let's look at some of the other useful things here. There is important information for instructors and sample assignments that you can use, which I think is pretty clever to make sure that people are using Netlytic instead of some other tool. And there's information for researchers and sort of, I guess, just the legitimizing the tool itself. And then, of course, there's tutorials that will help you get through, some of these, go even deeper with Netlytic to help you with your research. I'll go back to my data sets here. See if I can make an additional subcategory. So this was our dates before, but let's say from the announcement date. And now here's that. Now notice how many more results I get after DeSantis's announcement date. So there was plenty of people tweeting at Governor Ron DeSantis before his announcement about fascist, or just the word fascist, right? But many, many more after that this past Thursday when he made his announcement. So what does that say? Well, it says that at least that event, that thing that happened, encouraged many more users to be vocal, at least in that social media sense, in that short amount of time, less than a week. Whereas any time before that, the only things that met our search criteria, there's only 3 pages worth, so like 30 or so tweets total. This is a much larger data set. So I can save this, and I can compare the two things and see, well, before the official announcement, were people more vicious, or were people more vicious afterwards? Or perhaps like the posts that did exist before the presidency were actually more supportive. It's a big open-ended world here with Netlytic. This time I'm going to go over to YouTube. So, I don't know, maybe this is worth talking about. What is the difference between Twitter and YouTube in regards to the content that you're going to get? Well, on YouTube, you're scraping the comments of videos. Twitter sometimes includes videos and was part of like the search criteria, actually, if it was providing links or images or whatever. So YouTube, just the initial content is different to begin with, because it starts as a video and then we're scraping what our user or subscriber comments, right? So I'm going to call this YouTube test. Okay. So what we have to do is find a YouTube video and then enter this portion of the video ID here, I guess. So let's find something that we want. Get rid of this Twitter page. And we'll go to YouTube. All right, so let's just stick with our theme and go on DeSantis today. So we'll go DeSantis announcement. All right, his announcement video. Okay, at this time, released 6 days ago, yada yada. We'll go here and just pause the video. So we don't need to watch it right here. What we're looking for, again, is this information after the equal sign. So here it is. And I'm just going to highlight that, Control-C for copy, and then jump back over here and say Control-V for paste. And I'm going to import the information from it. Okay, so that's been my first sort of overview of Netlytic and how it might be useful for searching for particular affect or words or language or something in regards to a particular person. Thanks for watching.